Hello, welcome back to Bare Conversations, a vulnerable space for real people and their real faith. I'm your host, Daniela, and I'm so excited for today. Today is episode 4 in the Breaking Cycle series. And as you would have already seen from the title, it's all about feeling a bit left behind and no longer having friends. Today's episode is really for the people who feel like all of their friendships to a certain extent have started to fade away for some reason. Maybe not necessarily something big has happened, but the connections are just no longer as strong as they used to be. And if you've just kind of been wondering whether it's your fault or maybe you've changed too much, this episode is really for you. This week has been interesting in terms of relationships and friendships. So I'm excited and I'm also a bit nervous, but I'm confident that, today will be good. Okay. Okay. So let's get into the video. So, even though today is a dilemma episode, I just think it's really important to address why this topic exists and dive into really the hurts that are surrounded around this topic. Friendship breakups can hurt just as much or even worse than romantic feelings. So, the fact that you are carrying a level of grief and pain around this, it's really natural. Just like how you have put time, effort, maybe even money, emotions into romantic relationships, we put the exact same into our friendships. So when it comes to a point where these things are ending, it is going to hurt. It will feel like a lot has gone wrong. And we're going to name it for what it is. It's difficult, and that's okay. I would also say there's a level of shame that we actually carry when we admit friendship problems, when we admit that actually we might not have close friendships, when we admit that we've been left behind to a certain extent. So it is hard to discuss it, but then this is a safe space and it's okay that we are going to talk about it. And every shame that I've ever carried around friendship and losing friends, I've thrown it away. I've given it to God. I'm rebuking it all. I'm rebuking it all because I refuse to carry shame for something that's so natural and so common. And I hope that this will also help you to know that you don't need to carry that shame. You can let go of that shame. So I've titled the first dilemma, Everyone Moved On Except Me. I'm in my late 20s now and I feel like I've missed a memo everyone else got. My friends are married, busied, settled. Group chats are quiet unless someone needs something. No one has done anything wrong, but I feel invisible. I keep wondering if I'm being left behind or if I'm supposed to be alone right now. Hey, this is it's a difficult one, and I think a lot of self-blame tends to show up when we have this type of dilemma. But let's be so for real, like what is actually going on here? This is a case where actually life is happening. People's lives are moving in different directions and at different paces. For me personally, it does I don't necessarily have a lot of friends that are married and have kids yet, but then I do have quite a few friends in relationships doing different types of jobs, some still in school. So all our lives are look very different in terms of pace. And we also all, my closest friends, we all don't live in the same country. We live in different spaces. So the fact that life is moving at different paces for each one of us, we tend to feel the strain even more because we're not even there to experience the bad days and the good days together. And it is difficult because group chats do start to get more quiet. Me and my two best friends haven't used our group chat in a really long time, actually. I still talk to both of them and we are still connected very much so, but because we're not really in each other's eye line, it seems like, and it has felt like, that we are no longer each other's priority. And to a certain extent, I think that is the case. It is true, but it isn't as dramatic or as negative as it may sound. Life just looks different. And when life starts to look more different than it did when we were actually in school, it does also means that our relationship will look different and how we show up for each other will look different. And how we foster our relationship, how we maintain our relationship is going to look different also. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay that people's lives and things have started to move in a completely different direction from yours. And it's also okay that it feels like you've kind of been left behind to some extent. You've been put on reserve until they need something. You've been put on reserve until there's some form of commonality or until people are just not as busy. So now there is room for you. It's a difficult experience. It is. I've struggled through that. I think I've come out of it now, but I have struggled through that, feeling like being the last to know what's going on, always playing catch up with my friends' lives, but still loving them the same. When it's not understood and dealt with properly, it can build resentment. But also when it's not dealt with properly, it can easily turn to self-blame. You might start attributing the friendship fizzling out to actually you've done something wrong, or you're behind in life, or you're no longer of value to these people. But that's not always necessarily the case. I think in most cases that's not true. It's just that life looks differently, and therefore our expectations have to shift accordingly. We need to give the people in our lives the ample amount of grace, and also give ourselves enough grace and understanding so that we can handle and look at these situations in the best way possible. There's no shame that life just no longer looks the same for all of you. And it's unreasonable to an extent to have the expectations you did when you guys were still in school. That's when you had more time for each other. There wasn't life kind of breathing down your neck. So this is not necessarily my advice, but what I've learned is as seasons change, you also kind of have to adapt to it. You cannot attach the same sentiment and expectations on friendships built in an easier time when things actually get difficult. Loving your friends the same is easy, it's the easy part. But showing up when life changes is the more difficult part. And that is the part that I actually think we need to invest in. There is something to be grieved about. Things changing, like change is hard. But I don't think the priority should become focusing on how hard that change is, or focusing on the effects or the gravity of the change. I think the priority should be, how can I show up in this new season so that the love that we have for each other is sustained and is communicated in the right way. And another aspect of this dilemma and this situation of basically people moving at a different pace is we need to start to question within, why do we consider quiet, or why do we start to interpret quiet as rejection? Sometimes there may be something going on within us that has actually attributed to quiet being rejection. And I don't always think that's true. Like with my friends, my experience with all of them is we don't necessarily talk every day, and sometimes we actually don't talk every week. I recently went to a wedding for someone I would call a really close and dear friend, but we spoke maybe once a year. And even that speaking was more of reacting to each other's posts on Instagram or sending birthday messages or well wishes. It wasn't actually hearty conversation. But then when she was getting married, she invited me, and I was beyond excited. I was beyond excited and so ready to celebrate her love. And the fact that we hadn't spoken in depth in a long time, it did not have an effect on our relationship at all. When I finally saw her in person, it felt like no time had passed. And it's crazy because I've known her since I was about 17. So we then reconnected when I was 25 properly. So 8 years had passed, and it felt like no time had passed at all. If I had interpreted our quiet on both ends, because I also was very quiet from, in her perspective, like I also was very quiet. If I had chosen to interpret that quiet as rejection, I don't think I would have been able to celebrate her and her love and comfortably go to her wedding. And I don't think if she had done the same for me, she wouldn't have invited me, and she also wouldn't have been able to feel comfortable with me when we finally saw each other again. Periods of quiet in friendship doesn't always mean rejection. It doesn't always mean value is no longer seen. It doesn't always mean that love is no longer there. It just means there's a lot of more noise. So we need to give more space to allow whatever is more urgent to kind of sit. And then when it's time for us to show up, we can show up and be the noisiest in that space. I hope that analogy kind of makes sense. Like, what I'm saying is that it's okay that sometimes we have to take the back seat for something else to take the front seat. because life is going to change consistently and consistently, and what you need and what you have capacity for and what you can prioritize will also change. And I think we need to be flexible and graceful with our friends and with ourselves to allow those natural rhythms and patterns to unfold without putting too much emotional weight on them. Yeah. Hopefully that alleviates some of the grief and the shame and maybe a bit of the pressure that you might have been feeling in a friendship which has gone a bit quiet. Okay, so another place where this shows up, and the way I framed this dilemma is, I'm the one who pulled away, yet I still feel a bit abandoned. I stopped reaching out because I was tired of being the only one initiating. No one followed up. Now, months have passed, and I feel like I've proved my own worst fear, that if I stop trying, I disappear. I don't know if this is a boundary or just loneliness dressed up as self-respect. So I think this one might be a bit more extreme from what I've experienced, but that doesn't take away how common it also is. So without villainizing anyone, I think there are two ways to kind of look at this situation. It can either be, like in my case, where I'm the friend with actually the most capacity to reach out, so therefore I do so. Or it could be, I'm the only one who actually remembers to reach out, and therefore I do so. Both situations are very different and need to be handled very different. So I would say in my case, where I'm actually the one with the most capacity and free time, so therefore I tend to be the one to reach out the most, it would be a bit of a shame to villainize my friends for not having the same capacity that I do. Again, like the other dilemma, we're all in different life phases and we're all moving in life at different paces, and we also all have different priorities. It then becomes a little bit unreasonable to assume because you have more free time and you have more mental capacity or emotional capacity and you don't have the deadlines and you're not the one with the exams, therefore everyone else is exactly like you. That's not real. That's not true. Although it does feel hard to be the consistent initiator, if you love your friendships, whatever role is necessary for that season is really important that you play. You don't choose to give up on something because now your friendship requires more from you. I think all of us might have seen online or have heard how they say relationships are not necessarily 50-50, they're 100-100. There's other people who say, oh, they're not 50-50, they give me 60-40, 70-30, 90-10, just depending that, but both of you show up and give each other 100, or as when you show up, 100 is provided, something like that. And I don't really sit with any school of thought, but I do believe that relationships are sacrificial and do require a level of compromise. And when relationships are like that, there will be days where you have more energy than your friend. There will be days where you have more time than your friend. There will be days where, and in those situations where you have a bit more, giving more isn't the wrong thing to do. It's actually what helps balance back the friendship, because the love is still the same. The capacity just looks different. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think it becomes an issue when we start to villainize our friends for not being or having the same capacity that we do. Because at some point in your life, you will be the one with less and they might be the one with more. And you wouldn't want them to give up on you because you don't have as much to give in that moment. Having the self-awareness to actually analyze the situation, to know what side of the coin you fall on, whether you're the friend with more capacity or whether actually you are the one that actually cares the most, is really important so that you don't end up villainizing your friends for the wrong reasons. So then now, the other side of the coin, where actually it has nothing to do with capacity, you're just the one who cares enough to reach out. That one can be more black and white. And then the second half of the coin, actually the cycle that starts to show up here is when you start to overgive and resentment starts building. When you pour more than you actually have, or more than someone deserves, or more than the cup they've given you. And now your resentment starts to build in because you're being taken advantage of. That's a completely different place to be in. And that actually requires more self-awareness and self-respect on how to cope and how to deal with it. I think loving your friends is great and wanting your relationships is great, but like the Bible says, iron sharpen its iron. You are both meant to uphold each other. You're both meant to sharpen each other. So if it's a case where actually the people in your life, the friends you're in your life are just taking and taking and draining you and do not respect or pour back into you, then that's not the friendship for you. The right type of friends will want to see you at your best, will want to build you up, and will want to consistently show you how much they care about you. They will not consistently take and deplete you without gratitude. That is not what friendship looks like. So when it gets to when you're starting to realize that, okay, I'm the only one initiating and no one actually comes to check on me, and the only times they do show up is when they want to take, then I think you have your answer. I think it's clear that actually you're only valued or only desired for what you have to offer, and as soon as that offering is gone, you're not really thought of. And you deserve more than that. That is not the friendship that God desires for you. You definitely deserve more than that. And you're allowed to ask for more. You're allowed to push for more. And it's a good thing that you've seen this pattern now, because you've been given the information now that will help you make the changes that will protect you and protect your hearts from the wrong type of people. And the last one on in this episode that I also kind of resonate with is all about not really knowing how to make friends anymore. The dilemma goes like this. I've done a lot of inner work over the past few years. I'm quite more selective and less chaotic. The problem is I don't actually know how to build new friendships from this version of myself. I miss connection, but I don't miss who I used to be to keep certain types of connection. Okay, this one I really, really, really resonate with. And I don't have an answer to this. I don't think I really give an answer to any of them, but this specifically, I don't actually have an answer to this. I'm still searching. I still consistently search how to make friends and having to push myself out of my comfort zones. And I failed multiple times, but we can talk about the cycles that do show up in this kind of situation. So at first, I'm going to actually acknowledge how painful it might be to start to grow in life, and it feels like there's no reward. If anything, it feels like the world's actually punishing you. You become lonelier. People start to push you away, and people start to make judgments on you and your character that probably are not true. Just because you've started to have more boundaries, you've grown, you've started to say no to things you used to say yes to. It's a very common experience, and it also can be a very lonely one. And as a Christian, I think it actually starts to become a more frustrating experience, because I think it does tend to show up with new believers a lot. When you used to live a certain way or have a certain worldview or live in a certain lifestyle, and as soon as actually you've become a Christian and start to follow the teachings of Jesus, or you just basically start to move in a completely the opposite direction. So you repent, because that repenting essentially means turning around. So you completely turn around from who you used to be, and you start building a new life. It tends to come with a level of isolation that is very painful and actually very difficult to navigate. I've experienced this, and although I love the new version of me, I love how much wiser, braver, confident I am, sure of myself I am. I'm also do not like the loneliness that kind of follows, and also the struggle to meet new people and make new friends, and also to make new friends that you're in alignment with. I think regardless of any like religion or orientation, the type of friendship you keep should always have alignment in values, similar as you would with a romantic relationship. Does that make sense? It's really important that you and your friends are aligned. And as soon as you start to live maybe in a way that isn't very popular, or in a way that's very different from what's already around you, finding people to be in alignment with is actually really difficult. And I'm still struggling with it to this day. I'm getting better here and there, but it's a very difficult experience. But I just want to encourage you, if you're in this space, that it's okay that it's hard. You cannot deny yourself growth and improvement just to maintain friendships and to avoid loneliness, because feels even worse to be in a room with people you do not align with. The loneliness you tend to feel in those moments hits way worse than being in your room or being at home without those people. It doesn't seem obvious now, but from experience, I've I've gone to events where I was with people that I thought were my friends, or I wanted them to be my friends anyway, and we just didn't align. And I remember having to leave. Also does kind of help that I'm an introvert, but also I remember having to leave the space to go to the bathroom to cry because I just felt so out of place. I felt so lonely. I felt so isolated, and I was in a room with a lot of people who were very kind and very nice. We just didn't align. And I've learned from experiences like that I don't want to run away from loneliness so much that I choose loneliness in a crowded room. I think that's like a very common concept. I don't know, I've seen it in a lot of songs where you be in a room full of people with a lot of noise or music and stuff, and you just feel so alone. And I don't wish that on anyone, and it's not great. It's a hard experience. It's a hard experience. But I do promise that being the best version of yourself, being the healed version of yourself, being the improved version of yourself, the wiser, the stronger version of yourself is so much better and is way worth any form of isolation and loneliness that shows up. It's not God's will for you to be lonely. Like the Bible literally says in Genesis that God said it's not good for man to be alone. So God doesn't design loneliness for you, but then there is opportunity for growth in isolation. Sometimes we don't realize how much the people we keep around us are actually stunting our growth, how much the people we keep around us are tearing us down in like little ways that we don't actually see. So if you do find yourself in a place where you're being isolated a little bit for growth's sake, I think it is a cause for joy. It's a hard situation to find joy in, but I think it is a cause for joy because there's hope for tomorrow. There are people that you're aligned with. There are people that will build you up and will make all the harder days feel worthwhile. But it does take a bit of patience. And I hope I can kind of encourage you that don't give up. Just keep pushing, keep waiting, keep being faithful to whatever path you've chosen, to whatever growth you've chosen. Don't give up on yourself because you feel sad or you feel lonely. It's okay. And yeah, it's okay to cry. It's okay to be frustrated, and it's okay to want to give up, but please don't. I promise the people that are meant for you will be there soon, and they will show up. So I'm just going to end this episode by saying if you are in a season where it feels like life is moving at a very quick pace, maybe you feel like you've outgrown some of your friendships, or it feels like your friends have kind of left you behind to some degree. I just want you to know that this season of quiet and the loneliness you may be feeling is not the final say. And life will get better. There is hope at the end of the tunnel. Please do trust the process. Be patient with yourself. Give yourself grace and take the time to actually really analyze what's going on so that you can make the right conclusions that are healthy for you and also for your friendships. I really enjoyed having this conversation with you. And please, if you have any experience on basically friendship, losing friends, feeling like behind, even like maybe arguments and how you've dealt with them, please do share. I'm still learning, I'm still overcoming. I don't have all the answers, and I'd love to learn from you as well. Thank you so much for being a part of my community. I can't wait for the next episode. I'll speak to you soon. Bye.